I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Paul Marca. Paul Marca is the Executive Director of the Stanford Center for Professional Development here at Stanford University. He is responsible for collaborating with Stanford faculty, industry experts, and corporate partners to develop the curriculum of graduate degrees, graduate and professional certificates, and contract training for one of the largest university continuing education organizations and distance education networks. Paul is a Stanford graduate and has been a member of the senior management team for over 20 years. He has experience in television production and as a director, served on 2 startup advisory boards, consulted with a variety of media-based companies, and helped build the Stanford Advanced Project Management Program, which received the 2005 Best Non-Credit Program Award for the Association of Continuing Higher Education. In 2012, he was elected to the Council of the IACEE and elected the program chair for IACEE's June 2014 World Conference that will be held here on Stanford University's campus. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Robert, for that kind introduction, and thank you all for being here this morning for this webinar, Achieving Organizational Excellence in Continuing Professional Development. It's been my privilege to serve on the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education, an organization that I have admired from afar and joined about 4 years ago. And we've had a really interesting time in developing and addressing some unique challenges in the industry which we all know and love, as I see on the call. I think one of the opportunities that we have in delivering engineering education across the globe now is really to try to engender a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship for the engineers that we serve as we deliver this. And as organizations, it's absolutely critical to make sure that we all are on the top of our game. Here to help make sure that we are and talk about the quality program that has been developed in concert with the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education is Kim Scalzo, a good friend and colleague with the IACEE. A brief introduction about Kim. She's the director of the State University of New York, SUNY, Center for Professional Development, CPD. The center provides professional development and training opportunities for faculty and staff across SUNY's 64 campus system. And I know Kim does incredible amounts of travel amongst those locations. The services that they provide are certainly campus administration and leadership, faculty and instructional support staff, and IT staff. And as a director there, Kim is responsible for strategic planning, new program development, certainly this campus relationship management that she conducts, and managing partners and developments with training vendors and also partners. Kim has also been active in implementing the Open SUNY initiative. Many of you who are in the online learning space certainly have heard about that. It's a really impressive movement that SUNY has engaged to create ways that all campuses and all students that SUNY serves gain access to courses, degrees, and programs, maintaining an online presence that will, in all likelihood, span beyond the State University of New York. Prior to joining SUNY, Kim spent 18 years at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, our PI, as a director of academic outreach programs with the responsibility for distance learning, continuing education, summer programs, as well as outreach programs. Perhaps most important for our conversation, Kim right now serves as the first vice president for the International Association of Continuing Engineering Education, or IACEE, and is really the driver behind the quality program that we'll hear about today. That actually was developed in collaboration with the European Union. Kim really drove that initiative and has been a leader in this space. I would also mention for IACEE purposes that Kim has thrown her hat into the ring as president. I would say that perhaps she's a bit of a glutton for punishment here. And with that introduction, Kim, I want to turn the stage over to you to maybe take us through the quality program and how organizations like ours achieve excellence in continuing professional development.
Great. Thanks very much, Paul. It's my pleasure to be here today to talk to you about the quality program of IACEE and really how you can think of this as really being very strategic about how you approach quality management and continuing professional education, particularly in this age of disruption that I think we are all living in and feel like is becoming the norm. Before I get into the slides, just want to say a little bit about how this project or this initiative came to be for IACEE. I think it really grew out of the membership of the association and the council and the need for us to really think strategically about how we are managing quality. To me, it represents the kind of opportunity that participating in this kind of organization provides to its members, that when we identify challenges and issues that we're all facing, we have a vehicle for coming together to work together on things that are very relevant for us and result in benefits now to all of our members. So that's, I wanted to just say how, fortunate I feel to be part of this organization and to have colleagues like Robert and Paul and others across the world now who are thinking about the same things that I am. So we wanted to start with a bit of a poll question just to get sense of who the folks are, where you are in your organizations, and do you have a process for managing quality in your continuing education or continuing professional development organizations? And we're going to do this kind of quickly, so we're going to close the poll quickly. It's an easy yes or no question. If you could go ahead and submit those, and remember to click submit on your in the panel that's showing up on the right there. Just always interested in seeing how people are thinking about this and where you are, because I know depending on your organization, this may be something that you're thinking about very consciously or may not yet be on your radar screen. So I think that we have closed the polls, and it looks like of the folks who responded, we have more people who answered no than yes here, and that is not actually surprising. We all have so much going on in our daily lives that getting to the point where you actually have a process in place to manage quality is not easy and doesn't always come to the forefront, so not surprising. And for those of you who didn't answer, we're going to give you another shot at a question here, and I really hope that we get to hear from everybody. So if you are, regardless of whether you have something formal in place, how well do you think you assess quality? How well do you think you know where you stand with regard to quality within your organization? Again, there's 5 options to the right there: very good, good, fair, could be improved, or not sure. So just click on one of those, A, B, C, D, or E. We're going to go ahead and close the polls and see how that shakes out, whether you're doing something formal or not. Hopefully we'll get a sense of the group and where everybody is. I know for myself, when I got into this business, I would have said, quality, are we doing that? But, over time it is something, as I've really thought about, that we feel like is really very important. So again, hopefully you can all see the responses there. We have answers really ranging for those who responded from could be improved to fair and good. Interesting, nobody thinks they're doing a very good job at this. So I think we're all in the same boat. We're really trying to figure this out. And that, I think, is a really good segue and lead into where we want to go next here, which is, we know it's not easy to assess and manage quality. And so wouldn't it be great if you could have access to an online system that would allow you to look at your organization against a quality standard, against something that is known to be, if you're doing quality, here are all the things that you're doing. And then to be able to also benchmark with your peers to find out how you compare with them. I don't know about those of you on the call, but I know for me, I get asked on a regular basis, how are other colleges doing blah, 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 And so there's always this sense of, if we're about to make a decision, we want to know how we compare to other universities that are doing the same things that we're doing. Wouldn't it be great if there was an easy way to document and share your best practices so that we all could learn from each other and improve? And I think we do this a lot anecdotally or informally or one-on-one, but wouldn't it be great if there was an easy way for us to do that more formally? And then similarly, to get access to best practices in areas where you need to improve. So one of the things I love about IACEE is that whatever I'm doing, wherever I am, if I need help, if I have something that I'm being challenged with, I can reach out to that group and immediately get back responses to things that people are doing. So that would be fabulous. And then lastly, provide timely and relevant data to help you create your strategic roadmap for your own organization. So to be able to look at where you are and get a roadmap or a plan in place that tells you where you need to focus going forward. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Well, you can. And what we're really here to talk to you about today is the IACEE Quality Program. And this is the website that we have put up and have in place for you to access. It's actually automates a lot of the things that we just talked about. You can see on the right-hand side there, if you're not a member and would like to be a member, you're welcome to join. For folks who are already members of IACEE, you get the full benefits of this program as part of your membership in IACEE. For those of you who are not members, you are able to participate up to a certain point for no cost, and then if you want to go beyond that, the kind of the basic level, there is a fee. But we encourage you to check it out. On the left-hand side, there are a series of tools that are available that you can see for collecting data, for benchmarking, and for self-assessment. And so all here, all on the website, and I'm going to talk now a little bit more about all of what this encompasses. So we talked about being able to self-assess your own organization against a standard. So we're using examples here from our member organizations to just kind of show you exactly what you get here. So the self-assessment matrix is a series of quality criteria organized into 9 different categories, and for each category there are sub-elements. So leadership is that first one at level 1, and then there are 4 sub-elements there. And so each institution can assess themselves, put their scores in, and then see how they compare against the average of everybody else who is in the system. So you can see that in some areas, University of Kansas is above the average. In some areas, they're below the average. So that helps them get a sense of where they are relative to others who are doing continuing ed and continuing professional development. So that's one thing that you can do, self-assess against a standard. You can benchmark based on that self-assessment. So the same report that we were just looking at the bottom of it, it tells you the right here, based on the information that we selected in the query, who are the institutions that I was compared against. So I can say, let's just say here, criteria level 9, academic. We were a 3 and the average is 4.25. Chances are there are people in this group that I could learn from, so I might want to reach out to them to see what I could learn from them. So this is that benchmarking piece of it. And then the last thing I mentioned is that you could query the data for similar organizations. So you have the ability to put in query parameters to say, I only want to compare to institutions that meet these criteria. So in this example, we said public higher ed institutions because University of Kansas is public, U.S. organizations only, and then we could also say what type of higher ed institution, research institution. So you're able to kind of narrow that down to institutions who are like you, so that you can get a real comparison that's going to be valuable to you. You can also open it up and not specify those query parameters, but you have the flexibility, depending on what may be most relevant to you. So that's another aspect of being able to query the data. And then, to me, one of the most powerful things is the ability to document and share the best practices. So, we have this template that we've created, and so any area of the matrix where you would rate your organization highly, we're going to ask you to submit your best practices. Why? What is the evidence that you are really great in that particular criteria? And this is the template that we use, which is designed purposely to be easy to document, easy to fill out, and then for people who are looking for best practices, easy to reference or consume. So I can look at this and I get a bulleted list of things that, in this case, Aalto University in Finland is doing in the area of societal impact relative to their image. So, so these are all the things that they're doing, and there's contact information, which we've given the name but not the contact information here, for Kirsti Mietinen, who leads the continuing ed group there, and we could contact her and say, tell me what that study of training organizations was, and what exactly, what did you, how did you rate there that, that you did so well. So I could follow up and get more details, but this gives you a good sense of what all does it take to, to be a 5, which is the highest score that you could get in this criteria. So the documentation of the best practices is another piece that we just feel is really important and really valuable, and it's done in an automated way so that I could go into the system and say, here are the areas that I scored low in, where we really need to develop, and show me, who has best practices in that area. So very powerful, and I think as we continue to develop and build the contributors to this database, will be even more compelling. Okay. So again, this is all part of the CPD Benchmarking and Quality Improvement Program, or the Quality Program for IACEE. It's a standardized tool, an online system for benchmarking that enables both self-assessment and continuous quality improvement. That was kind of our vision. It is based on the European Foundation for Quality Management Excellence model. So when we were beginning this project, we looked at a range of quality models that were out there, and interestingly, the EFQM model is used very widely in industry in Europe, and it was thought to be most relevant for what we do in continuing education, continuing professional development, because what we do is very market-driven, much more like industry operations than some of the other quality models that you see in higher education. And Paul referenced this earlier, that in continuing education, we tend to be the more entrepreneurial and market-driven organizations on our campuses. So we really felt like this model, which looks both at the processes that you have in place to ensure quality, as well as the outcomes, and your real some of your real metrics for determining quality, would be applicable for us. And so we had this collaboration through IACEE of both U.S. and European institutions to come together to adapt that EFQM model and apply it to continuing education. Initially, our focus was on continuing education centers for engineering programs. So, really kind of focused in those CEE centers. But interestingly, there were enough of us in this collaboration group that, in addition to providing continuing education for practicing engineers, we're also providing business programs or other professional development programs that we thought, this quality model and these processes and the ability to self-assess and benchmark goes beyond engineering. It's really not discipline specific. So in the kind of second part of the project, we expanded the application of the tool and did a lot of testing and validation, to really convince ourselves that this was not just relevant in engineering. And so we adapted it, expanded it beyond that, and now it really, even though this is the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education, we're really, promoting this and engaging people who are doing programs well beyond that. And I'm a perfect example of that. I do now continuing professional development for faculty and staff in higher education, so not necessarily, engineering related even. So that's the kind of overview summary of the program. This graphic really shows how you could use this system in a process to manage your quality. So you really start here at the top with providing your demographic data, or characteristics about your organization and your institution. So now these are the elements of: are you public or private? Are you a research-based university, or more liberal studies, general education? Or are you located in the U.S., or are we talking about other countries? So you put in your demographic data. How many students are you serving? What disciplines are you serving, et cetera? So get your demographic data. The next step is really the self-assessment, and this is really applying that matrix with the self-assessment data to your organization. How do you rate in all the criteria areas? Following very closely behind that is the documentation of your best practices. And one of the things that we've learned over time as we've done this with a variety of organizations is that the more that you can state the evidence for the ratings that you're given, the more likely they are to be accurate. And in the process of doing that, you are actually documenting in those areas where you have best practices, you're actually documenting your best practices. So we want to capture that as well. Once you've done that, those two pieces, then you're in a position to really look at where are my strengths and where do I need to really develop to improve our quality and be sure that we're, we have quality in what we're doing. Once you've identified those areas, now you're in a position to really engage in data-driven benchmarking. So you can say, here are the areas that we have strengths and the areas we need to develop. And for those areas we need to develop, let's go out and look at institutions where they have strengths that we can learn from. And through that benchmarking, you can then move into, a lot of times that can feed into your strategic plan and really begin to have a systematic way of developing and improving the quality of your programs. And that should never be just a one-time thing. This is depicted as a cycle that continues, because quality improvement should be happening on a continual basis. And this provides you with, I think, a roadmap or a plan or a set of steps to enable that to happen on an ongoing basis. And then just to get over to this next slide, so this just plugs in the tools that we have developed to enable the process. And so we have this benchmarking demographic data sheet, which has some basic information, and then we have a supplemental piece to that as well. Those are online forms that exist on that website, so you literally just go in and enter your data. And then there is a matrix score sheet, so for the self-assessment piece, where you get to actually say, for each of your criteria, where do you stand? And then we've also automated the best practices piece of it, so any of the criteria where you would rate yourself as a 4 or a 5 on that 5-point scale, a best practices box will pop up, and you'll put in the elements of your that document your best practice. So with those tools, then this process becomes actually much more feasible and automated, and then you can have the opportunity to do some of, in the benchmarking, do the querying through that system. So so that's the process and the tools. And I should say that we are going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions or you're thinking about them, go ahead and put those in the chat. Okay, let's see. Again, so this is the website again, and just to kind of review, on the left-hand side are the tools that I mentioned, the demographic data sheets, the matrix, and the best practices template. There also is a booklet that we published that you would get a subset of that here that talks about the whole program and the process. And if you want to actually sign up and join, you can do that from the buttons on the right-hand side. We also have a LinkedIn group that we've created for people who are members to join the conversation and contribute and discuss offline what's happening. So we encourage you to check out the website and to go there and to join if you haven't already. And I know we have some current members who are on the webinar, so I just want to thank you for being here, and hopefully this is helping you to think more about how you'll actually use it. Okay, so We are the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education, and having this really be globally represented was important to us. So this represents our collaboration team, initially very focused in the U.S. and in the European Union. I want to say that our EU colleagues really were ahead of the game on this with us, and particularly a couple of them kind of got the ball rolling with this project. And then, we got involved in probably kind of part 2 of this kind of 4 or 5 part project. And it really has been one of the greatest collaborations that I think I've participated in. And I really think that in addition to the universities represented here, we also reached out to a group of campuses and colleges in China who also vetted and reviewed the system, even though they weren't formally part of the collaboration team. And we have shared this at a whole host of conference sessions around the world where people from, countries all over the world and universities all over the world have, reviewed and given us feedback on the language and the criteria and the relevance for the types of organizations that they have. So this was really the team that I would say probably did the majority of the work in terms of developing the tools and the process and the system and getting it operational. But there has really been much more global input. And these next few slides, which I'll just click through kind of quickly, show you the list of organizations that have attended or participated in various sessions and meetings that we've held to vet this tool. So, you can see all over the world. And interestingly, we've also had some industry participation in this as well. So companies, many of the large companies across the world have their own professional development organizations and activities. So we thought it was important to get their perspectives as well, and also very validating feedback from them. So this is kind of the third slide of the campuses. So you can see really very, very broad participation and perspective, and it all has been really valuable. Okay, so we're doing on time. I think we're doing okay. Okay, so one of the most important things, when Paul was giving my introduction, you heard strategic planning is one of the things that I'm charged with at my center and also was at RPI. And to me, it's always been kind of a challenge when you're working on strategic planning to have kind of data-driven inputs that you can use to really help you determine where to focus and where do you really need to spend significant efforts, your efforts in whatever the time frame is of your plan. And so when we began working on this project and seeing the potential outputs that we could get, it really became very obvious to us that this could serve as a significant portion of what you usually consider to be a SWOT analysis in strategic planning to kind of get that process started. So I have done that now, both from the RPI side and from the SUNY side, and it really has been just kind of very valuable in that regard. The benchmarking pieces of it, can be really helpful in determining what those future strategic directions are. So when you see what your strengths are and where you need to develop, and you can reach out and see what other people are doing that you can learn from, that for me and my organization has helped drive new initiatives. And we've had good examples and practices to draw from in designing and implementing those new initiatives. Of course, the goals in the strategic plan, when I came to SUNY in 2009, and the first thing that I did was a strategic plan, and this kind of assessment was part of the input to that. And so we looked immediately at where were the low scores, and what did those need to be focused on in terms of goals for us. So, and I'll show you some examples of that when we get to some of the later slides. And then the last thing, which to me has been really valuable, and any of you who are involved in accreditation efforts know that being able to demonstrate progress towards your goals in a data, in terms of data, is becoming more and more important. And so if you do this kind of self-assessment annually or on some regular cycle that makes sense for your organization, then you have a mechanism for documenting that progress and being able to show to whoever it is, whoever your stakeholders are that you need to keep informed, where you are making progress and that you are making progress on things that are important to them. So, so I think that, for those of you who may be thinking, where does this fit, or why would I use this, or where could it be helpful? Strategic planning is a really, I think, important, relevant area. And with all of the changes happening in leadership in higher education and the continual questioning of the role and the value of continuing education within an institution, I think this can be incredibly helpful. So something you may want to think about. So now what I wanted to show is a couple of examples from the University of Kansas and SUNY of how this was used in strategic planning. So this is one of the enablers or process categories of the self-assessment matrix. The first one is on leadership. And when University of Kansas did this, they did their self-assessment and identified what was their baseline scores, and then had some very deliberate conversations about what scores they wanted to achieve. What level do they really want to go to in each of those areas? So you can see in each of those levels about developing the vision and the mission, continuous improvement of the management systems, leadership and external relations, and then leadership and motivation. They looked at, all the way to the right-hand side there, where they were now. The top number represents their baseline. And then what was their target? What did they want to go to? And, usually when you think about these kinds of ratings or scales, if it's a 5-point scale, you think everybody wants to be a 5. You want to strive to be a 5 in everything. In this tool, that's not necessarily the case. And one of the things to really talk about is, where do you want to be? So in this case, they really only identified the first sub-criterion, that they wanted to get to a 5. And all the others, getting to a 4 would be great for them. So when you identify where you are and where you want to get to, we have very detailed descriptions of what each of those levels mean. So they're able now to go back and say, okay, what's our action plan for getting from that 3 to a 5 or 2 to a 4, et cetera. And that gives them kind of their roadmap of where they want to go. So I think that was a really helpful way of seeing how they were using the data and how it was driving their strategic planning efforts. But it's just one example. At SUNY, one of the things that I was charged with when I came here, as I mentioned, was a strategic plan. There had not been a strategic plan in place for a while. There was actually some questioning of whether or not the center was actually going to continue. So there kind of was, a leap of faith taken, I think, when they hired me to say we are going to continue the center and we want it to be important and relevant to SUNY. And so I had to develop, I was charged with developing a plan. And so you see that reflected. I think I told you that I came here in 2009. We actually have scores from 2013 that I need to add to this slide. But you can see over time, where were we the weakest? It was really in those efforts related to our strategic plan. And in the first year that I was here, first year and a half, 2 years, we worked really hard on that. And we made some immediate improvements. And then, there were some additional progress later on, but that really told me where I needed to focus. I needed to, take those ones, and we needed to move well beyond them, and we did. And I can demonstrate that, and I can document that. So, so this was a really great, I think, thing for me to be able to do, and this is something that I share certainly within my organization, but with other stakeholders. So I can, provide them with some data-driven, results of our plan. And as you see, the other categories in the self-assessment matrix, they relate to all those aspects of our business. And so I really, have appreciated the opportunity to have a tool to be able to do this on an annual basis and to be able to demonstrate where we're making progress. Again, just another example of how we are using, this kind of tool at SUNY. So let's see, I think that's it for me for the formal presentation. And I'm going to turn it back over to Paul for the next part of the webinar.
Thank you, Kim, and I hope you all continue to think about the questions that you might be asking Kim, and I'll also be joining for the questions and answers session. While you're thinking about those questions, I wanted to just share a little bit more about how to get involved with IACEE and also with this quality program. I would give you, as you read the slide here, I'll give you 3 reasons why we're now actively engaged. I've asked our team to submit our data from Stanford University and also be a part of the Developers Forum. 3 reasons. One is it's no longer the case that online learning and professional development is a sideline operation. Because of the massively open and online courses, the white-hot spotlight is in online learning and education, and particularly how universities extend education beyond the borders and the Ivy walls of the Ivy League and so on. And so people are asking at the highest levels of the university, well, what are you doing over there, and how do you compare against your peers? This is an unbelievably great way, this particular tool, to assess, define where you are today, assess where you might go, think about how you match up against your peers and where you want to head, as Kim mentioned, and how finally can you improve as an organization. Think about that spider diagram. You'll always be striving and achieving to get better. You may never get all 5s across all dimensions, otherwise you wouldn't be actually focusing on the business that you run. The second reason that we got involved is we just got accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And in reality, it was a self-rating that we provided to them. We had some customer benchmarking, and they assessed us. How more powerful would it have been if we could have provided an external benchmark against our peers rather than just a self-rating and self-assessment, certainly customer-driven. I anticipate as accrediting bodies across the nation and really across the globe get more active in the extended education space, all of us will be charged with thinking about how we rack and stack, and also using these kinds of external tools would be the way to go. And then finally, this is a global database, and we now run, particularly in engineering education, but also in professional development, it's a global game now. The Internet has made sure of that. And to try to aggregate and compare against a global peer set is really difficult unless you have a great database like this. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, get involved. There's a bunch of different levels, including a click and participate right away. There's obviously a couple of paid options as well, but please explore that on the website, which is listed here. We do have one of the other things that the IACEE offers its membership is a wonderful world conference, and I'm pleased to be a part of this activity. I've participated in 4 of these sessions, and they have been a great learning experience. We'll be hosting this activity at Stanford University June 24 to 27. And we have the president, John Hennessy, who's done a lot of thinking about workforce development. He actually is an engineer, computer science faculty member by training, created a number of companies, is engaged at the board member level, became dean of the School of Engineering, provost of the university, and now president. He had his own rich journey, and will share some of his perspective on the global workforce of tomorrow. He'll be followed on day 2 by Daphne Kohler, the co-founder of Coursera, also another Stanford faculty member, certainly the largest, arguably, in developing and delivering massively open and online courses. And now they have a signature track for many of your universities are probably involved or at least aware of that. Daphne will share her thoughts on innovation in education and share a few ideas about where she sees the the education industry going, in particular with a focus in engineering where she is based. The final day will be on university-industry collaboration. Without customers, many of our organizations wouldn't be able to do the great work that we do. Leonard Lane is the Vice President and Managing Director of the Fung Academy. That's part of the Li and Fung group. And he'll be talking about his collaborations both with MIT as well as with Stanford. We've had the great good privilege of working with Leonard over many years, and we're expanding that collaboration. But he'll talk a little bit about the challenges and opportunities of partnering with universities. It's rewarding work for those in industry, but sometimes can be a little tricky to navigate universities. I would like to focus also on a couple of things here related to the World Conference. We have 2 workshops that we'll be offering. The first is on innovations in continuing engineering education. Soma Chakrabarty at Kansas will be leading that, along with Lars Fröland. He'll be working, and I'll be joining that conference as well. The goal of that offering will be to think about how you can innovate, even in amongst university colleagues who may be thinking about keeping you in the box. How can you get outside the box? So we'll be talking about those opportunities. One workshop that I'd love to highlight, many of us, as we become more globally focused and the market for all of us expands, it's incumbent that we focus on e-marketing and thinking about also the new users coming in the marketplace. So combining e-marketing and social media and online tools is a really great way to learn more about how to extend your existing offerings to a much broader marketplace. I know that, for example, many of our programs focus on English-speaking Nordic countries in order to gain new customers for the great offerings that we have here at Stanford, and I'm sure that this focus this particular workshop will help you focus on what marketing insights and strategies might you develop, and I know it's a very active session. You'll be actually building perhaps a marketing campaign for your own organization. So getting work done while having fun here at Stanford University between June 24, which is the workshop day, and June 27. Finally, as an IACEE organization, we've been talking actively about how we might engage this, what I would call sometimes an accidental career. Those of us who have fallen into roles and really love the great work that we do. The IACEE has a continuing engineering education manager training program, both for those who are emerging as leaders in this industry and for those of us with some gray hair. We always can be learning new tricks of the trade. And so Pat Hall and Kim Scalzo have been driving this initiative, and here are some areas of content and some of the things that we're thinking about. And I think we're particularly focused on continuing engineering education managers as we develop that program and offering. There'll be more if you check the website as well. And with that, I'd like to shift gears now and maybe address some of the many questions that we have here. Kim, I'll connect back with you as well. If I look at one question that I think was really interesting, you talked a lot about best practices in your presentation. So how are best practices determined? What is the process by which I'm being compared if I rate a 2 or a 3, something like this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul, and I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the levels. So each of the criteria in the self-assessment matrix asks you to rate yourself on a level of 1 through 5. A 1 means we're really not observing this. We're not sure what our quality is. 2 means that quality is based on an individual person. So there may be an individual or somebody who is has some processes in place to ensure quality, but if that person left, we're not sure they'd continue. 3 means we have some systematic mechanisms for ensuring quality, and those are in place, not tied to an individual. 4 means not only do we have those systematic processes in place, but we are showing improvement in our quality. And then 5 means we are so good at this. We have systematic processes in place. We're constantly showing improvement, and we are considered the exemplar. Other organizations are coming to us to see how we do this and to learn from us. So So you have to be able to, for whatever you rate yourself, you have to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, document and show evidence of that rating. So if you are going to rate yourself a 4 or a 5, 4 meaning you have systematic processes in place and you're showing improvement, or 5, going beyond that, you're considered the exemplar in this particular area, then then that is considered a best practice that we want to share and for others to be able to learn with. So you really only have best practices if you fall into that 4 or 5 category. Just to give an example, I would guess when Stanford does this in the areas of marketing and program promotion, you guys would rate, I think, in that 5 area, because I know you're somebody that we have gone to say, how do you do that really well? And we know that you are producing results because of that. And so there are many things that you could identify in that best practice form that others would immediately be able to learn from. So that's just an example and clarification. So did that address the question?
I think it did. Thank you. I have a couple more here that I want to get to. So the second question I think is interesting and related is what typically is the organization being assessed? Is it really the institution, as in Stanford University, or is it more continuing engineering or continuing education focused? What has been your experience with this tool?
Yep. So one of the things that we find with continuing education is that it's generally not part of the mainstream activities of the university. That's why continuing ed organizations exist. And so it really is that entity, whether it's continuing education, continuing professional development, outreach, whatever it may be called. It's that entity that really has responsibility and authority for ensuring quality in the programs that is being assessed. So when you reference the vision or the mission, it's really vision or mission for that organization. When you reference the processes that you have in place for things like marketing or services or financial operations or tracking of your data, it's really within the continuing ed organization. And that's often something that as people are going through the questions, they are constantly asking themselves, is it really my organization or is it the broader university? And so it really is the focus on the organization.
So there's another related question, the notion of customer benchmarking. The question is really to you. You have internal customers. Are you conducting this same study with them, asking them to participate, not only give you feedback as an external, but as getting some assessment from them as well as from your staff?
Yeah, so when we do this assessment, our whole staff is engaged in this, and so everybody does their individual ratings, and then we all come together to discuss them to determine what our consensus rating is, that we call it, for the organization. So that's kind of one level. We do other kinds of assessments of our customers, which are elements of this quality model, which is how well are you understanding or engaging your stakeholders and their needs and getting their input and feedback on the quality of your program. So we have kind of 2 levels of assessment, if you will, one with our staff and a different one with our customers and stakeholders.
Great. You mentioned this briefly, but could you maybe expand the notion of how do I get comparative data? If my organization is 5 people and X thousands of students or whatever, how do I get the comparisons? What's the tool allow me to do?
So when you are inputting your own data, you are providing information about your organization, such as what is your volume of revenue, what disciplines, how many employees do you have? Again, are you public or private? Are you research-based institution or a more comprehensive college, community college? So you're putting all that kind of data in as part of your initial entry into the system. What that enables, if everybody is doing that, is when you want to see how you compare to others, you can select on options of all of those parameters. So I can say, I want to compare myself. I only have 8 employees in my organization. I want to compare with organizations that are small, the smallest scale that we have there. I want to compare with institutions that are offering a range of disciplines, because I don't just do engineering. And you can go along through any of those parameters where you provided data on your own organization. You can then use as parameter for querying the data later.
That's great. So thank you very much for that. I think that we're getting toward the end of the session here, and I wanted to thank you all for hanging in. We have a special offer for you, though, so don't leave right just yet. As you know, we have the World Conference here at Stanford, the 24th to 27th of June, where the weather is really nice here. I think the rain, we looked at it, was about roughly a 1% chance of rain. It's happened like once every decade or something like this. So no rain. Sun is guaranteed. And we have a special offer for you and also for your colleagues who you would love to get involved. This is the conference of the Bring a Friend. So bring some folks along and save $100 using this discount code, which you can populate into the registration, which is at the website there. Now, this offer does expire on May 1st, 2014, so do share it in advance of that. But we hope that you can join us at Stanford, continue this kind of conversation both about quality, about innovations in education, about workforce development, and then finally about this great work that we do collaborating with industry and also with the universities. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time and attention. We hope to see you here at Stanford University on June 24, 27, and we wish you a good day wherever you are in the world. Thank you.